Welcome back to the Deep Dive. Today, we're immersing ourselves in the story of a horse who earned the nickname the Queen who dominated the fillies scene, a champion named Mejiro Dober.
And that title, Queen, it's so perfect, but it hides this fascinating contradiction.
Oh.
Well, when you look at the sources, what immediately jumps out is how she was described. She was beautiful, she was powerful, but also highly delicate, moody, and yet completely legendary. She was just defined by this volatility.
Okay, so let's unpack this. Our mission today is to really extract the essential story of this defining mare from the late 90s Japanese racing scene.
Right.
We need to understand how she achieved this true dynasty status, 5 G1 races, and a staggering 4 straight JRA awards. I mean, that's not just winning, it's 4 years of recognized excellence.
And we absolutely must frame her era correctly because that context is everything. She achieved all this dominance before it became, commonplace for Japanese mares to routinely challenge and beat top male rivals.
So her kingdom was strictly the fillies division.
Exactly. And she ruled it with such consistency that she basically reset the benchmark for what female excellence even looked like back then.
And here is our initial deep dive nugget, and it comes straight from her name. Mejiro Dober was a horse born with
an attitude, and everybody knew it. She was named after the Doberman dog breed. And the sources all noted that in hindsight, that high-strung, regal, intense personality was just a perfect match.
A powerhouse with an internal emotional throttle that needed, let's say, careful handling.
Exactly. So let's trace her scent. She was born in 1994, part of that legendary and very high-profile Mejiro dynasty.
The pedigree was definitely there. A daughter of Mejiro Ryan, who was a Takarazuka Kinnin winner.
And she was part of Ryan's very first crop of souls, right? Shared with her contemporary, Mejiro Bright.
She had the blueprint for greatness, for sure. And crucially, she landed in the right stable Yokochiyo Kubos and formed the star-making partnership right away.
This is where it gets really personal, because her rider was the young, very determined jockey Yutaka Yoshida. And you have to think about the pressure on them.
I mean, he was only in his 3rd year as a professional jockey when he gets partnered with Dober. Talk about a career maker.
Or a career breaker.
Yeah.
But the risk paid off. I mean, it paid off immediately.
Yeah.
Because she wasn't just a winner for him, she was the catalyst.
Right.
Mejiro Dober carried Yoshida to both his first ever stakes win and his first G1 victory. When we talk about champion horses making champion jockeys, she is the textbook example.
And that first G1 victory came so quickly. She debuted in July of '96, and by the end of that year, she wins the Hanshin 3-year-old filly stakes,
which today we know as the Hanshin Juvenile Fillies.
And that win instantly secured her the title of JRA Champion 3-year-old filly.
For those who might not know, the JRA awards are basically the Oscars of the sport in Japan. So at just 2 years old, she was already dominating her class and being recognized nationally. It's just staggering momentum.
Which carries us right into the Classic Trail in 1997, her defining 3-year-old season.
She was aiming for the Triple Crown, and she started with a really tight near miss, finishing 2nd in the Okusho.
That's Japan's version of the 1,000 guineas. So close.
And that kind of close call could have derailed a lesser horse, especially one as, highly strung as she was described. But she harnessed it. Her redemption was swift and overwhelming.
That's when she really cemented her reputation, wasn't it?
Absolutely. She goes on to win the Yushun Himba, the Japanese Oaks, proving she had the stamina.
And then she caps the whole series by capturing the Shuka show. Winning both of those, the Oaks and the Shuka show, that's the definitive classic double for a filly.
It was immediate validation of her talent, and the JRA recognized it with a sweep of awards that year. Champion 4-year-old filly and the best homebred title. She wasn't just winning races. She was consistently seen as one of the most reliable, top-tier fillies of her generation.
Okay, and this is where it gets really, really interesting, because the whole narrative shifts from just being reliable to being a true specialist. This is the core paradox of her story.
Yes. This emotional narrative is what truly defines her legacy. As she got older, this strange pattern emerged, and it became predictable.
Which was?
Against fillies, her attitude translated into this focused intensity. She was unstoppable, a complete monster. But against colts and geldings, she often struggled badly.
Now, when you hear that, the first thought is technical, right? Maybe she couldn't handle the distance, or maybe just the physical strain of running against bigger horses.
That's the logical first thought.
What?
But the sources are pretty clear. The trainers believe she had the raw talent, the stamina, all the physical capability to beat the boys.
So what was it?
The amazing confounding part is that the inconsistency was almost purely psychological. The sources describe her as notoriously emotional and delicate, really prone to high anxiety.
So the atmosphere of the race mattered more than her actual ability?
Precisely. You put her in the right mood, the right atmosphere, the familiarity of a fillies-only race where she was comfortable, she would just crush the field. But you stress her out with the noise and intensity of a mixed-gender race.
What did that actually look like on the track, though? I mean, how did this emotional delicacy physically manifest itself when she was stressed?
That is such a fascinating detail from the notes on her races against colts. They said that in that high-pressure, mixed-gender environment, she would become visibly tense.
Wow.
Sometimes she would sweat profusely even before the race started, and her muscles would just tighten up during the run. She was literally stressed out of her own performance. Her mental state was physically sabotaging her raw speed.
That's incredible, to overcome that emotional hurdle and still dominate her own class like she did. It just makes her achievements even more spectacular.
It elevates her status immensely, doesn't it? She wasn't just beating rivals, she was conquering her own anxiety to do it.
And that dominance was certified by the specific victories that sealed her status as the queen. She won the Fukuhimba Stakes and, crucially, the Queen Elizabeth II Cup.
The Elizabeth Johai,
Yeah.
yes. 2 years in a row, back-to-back.
Back-to-back G1 wins in one of the most prestigious fillies-only races. And remember, G1 is the highest level of competition. There was no question who the queen was in that kingdom.
Absolute monarchy.
Yeah.
And she kept this form right through her older career, which is how she got that 4-year streak of JRA awards. That level of consistency is just extremely rare.
5 G1s is remarkable even today, but we need to hammer home that historical context again. Before Mejiro Dober, what was the record for top Japanese mares?
The previous record for G1 wins by a mare in Japan was only 3.
So she didn't just inch past the record.
She smashed it. She achieved 5. And remember, she did this when mares rarely even ran, let alone won, at the top level outside of their own very restrictive divisions. Her record of 5 G1s stood for an entire decade until the incredible mare Vodka came along.
That's how significant she was.
Absolutely.
Okay, wait. 5 G1s set the bar that high, but then you immediately bring up her rival, Air Groove. If Dober set the G1 record, why does Air Groove cast this shadow in the minds of the racing community?
That's the critical distinction. Air Groove is the perfect foil. She defines the difference between being a specialist and being versatile.
Dober was the absolute queen of fillies, no question.
Yes, but Air Groove was often considered the more versatile star because she consistently ran well against the colts and geldings.
And when you say ran well, you mean she was winning major mixed-gender races, like the Sapporo Kinen against the boys. And she finished second in the Japan Cup.
A spectacular second, yeah. She was comfortable in the very company that Dober struggled with so intensely.
And their head-to-head record shows that, right?
Yeah, it reflects it perfectly. Air Groove won 4 times against Dober. Dober only managed to beat Air Groove once. So Dober's legacy is defined by the volume and mastery of her division, while Air Groove's is defined by the quality of the competition she routinely faced and beat. They really do complement each other in history.
So we have this intense specialist champion whose career wrapped up in 1999. What was her second act? She spent a long time as a broodmare, from 2000 to 2016.
And this part of her life is, well, it's frankly heartbreaking. It's just marked by struggle and hard luck. Despite being bred to some of the best stallions in the world, her foals just suffered these terrible tragedies.
Like what?
Some never even made it to their debut. One suffered a fatal injury on the track. Another fractured its spine in the stable. It was just a career of frustrating, crushing setbacks on the breeding side.
That sounds like a really disproportionate amount of bad fortune for just one mare.
It is a high-risk industry, unfortunately. But the concentration of severe misfortune Dober experienced was certainly exceptional. It makes her inability to produce a champion of her own all the more poignant.
The ultimate irony, then. The Queen of Fillies couldn't pass her royal baton successfully, at least not in the first generation.
Exactly. However, her racing greatness does live on, though indirectly. Her lineage thankfully survived through her grandchildren, a few of whom did become stakes winners. So the bloodline continued, just through that hard luck generation.
But the truly wholesome epilogue comes in her current role. We're talking about 2025. She's still alive, an absolute senior citizen, living a peaceful retirement at Lake Villa Farm. And she isn't just, lounging around.
No, she still works. And this is the most charming detail. Mejiro Dober, the fiery champion, is now the farm's lead horse.
Lead horse.
She acts as the auntie, the teacher, and sometimes fittingly, the strict babysitter for the younger horses.
I absolutely love that image. The emotionally delicate Queen of Fillies is now the farm's chief supervisor, guiding the younger broodmares and their foals during turnout.
Her legendary attitude is now harnessed for good. It's the perfect retirement for a mare who was defined by her strong personality. She's now this calming, guiding force, a true elder stateswoman.
Thank you so much for watching. If you enjoyed this video, please like and subscribe for more.